It turns out there might be something fairly unique about the culture of the banking industry that turns normally honest men and women into gigantic liars. Researchers at the University of Zurich tested 128 employees at a bank with an honesty test. The bankers were told to flip a coin 10 times. Each time they flipped, they could earn $20 if it matched what researchers had requested, either tails or heads. An honest person would report matching the requested flip result about 50% of the time, since it is effectively random. But when workers were asked questions about their work at the bank, placing their work at the forefront in their minds, they self-reported the result that paid off 58% of the time. When researchers repeated the test with more than 350 people not in the banking industry, job questions didn't change honesty levels. Researchers tested 80 employees of other banks, and they came up with about the same results as those with the main bank. So effectively, if you work a normal job and they try to manipulate you by talking about your job, it doesn't affect how honest you are in the study. But those bankers, suddenly they're thinking, you know what, I'm going to try to get a little bit more for myself.
So I like this partly because it validates what I've been saying all along. It's not that they're bad people. Like, it's absurd to think of a banker as like, oh, he's a particularly evil person, right? No, they're just regular human beings responding to normal incentives and disincentives. And as one guy, Walt Pavlo here, who's not a banker but who got caught for wire fraud and money laundering, who now is a good guy, talks about it, lectures about it, says, look, they told us at MCI where he worked, be more aggressive and make money at all costs. And so we responded to those incentives, right? And so I like that they tested it against people that were not in the banking industry, in other industries, and they were perfectly honest. Yeah. And I like that they tested it with bankers about their home life where they were perfectly honest, right? They're not bad people. It's just that when you put them in a context and a culture and you remind them of that context and you say, okay, now how are you gonna act? They're like, well, we got taught to be aggressive and not mind the rules too much, right? So I'm going to cheat a little bit and put money in my pocket because that's kind of what I do in my day job.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're following the incentives, they're following their training, and many people would say that if they didn't try to get ahead in that way, they'd probably be replaced by someone else who did or would. By the way, the American Bankers Association got wind of these results, and they said, while this study looks at one bank, which isn't actually true, they looked at other banks as well, America's 6,000 banks set a very high bar when it comes to the honesty and integrity of their employees. Banks take the fiduciary responsibility they have for their customers very, very seriously. And every time they crash the economy, they sit and they think about it really hard for a while.
And they think, you know, we have crashed this economy with the utmost integrity.
Exactly.
And if you don't remember, there was great hearings in the Senate and certainly great writings in Rolling Stone, Matt Taibbi, and many other places where we found the internal memos of these great, honest bankers with their wonderful integrity. And they would say things like, let's crush our clients. Our clients, okay? Not even like random people, the people we're supposed to be serving. Let's make them eat shit sandwiches, okay? And all these other descriptions that elude me, okay? That I never even heard about, to make sure that they scam their clients. And they full well knew it. And in the recent story we did, JP Morgan Chase said, stop emailing about all these practices. Basically, we don't want to get caught. It's obvious what we're doing. We're making things that are toxic look better so we can trick people into buying them. Okay, that was part and parcel of how they made billions of dollars and also how they crashed the economy. Now, it's unfortunately endemic into the current banking structure, but it doesn't have to be. There are other banking structures across the world that work. We need banks. The idea isn't to get rid of banks. It's to make them work better so that we actually do have honest bankers with integrity, which is possible.
Give them some incentive in the long term to make the bank that they work at actually a success, rather than just, I want to get a couple of big bonuses and then I'll go live in the Cayman Islands or something.
And I'll even give you an example associated with the United States. During the Great Crash in 2008, none of the private banks went under, okay? And the reason for that was, it is at those private financial institutions, it is the partners' money that's at stake. So they were a lot more careful with it. Now, when it's a public company, well, then the executives, it's not their money. it's the shareholders' money.
So who gives a hell?
Right, and that's at a worst case scenario. They know that likely the government's going to step in and have the taxpayers foot the bill anyway. Yeah. So when it's not your money, like if I sent you to a casino and said, all right, here's $100, $1,000. Now you'll get to keep all the winnings, but you'll have none of the losses. What would you do? You'd gamble like a madman because maybe you win. You'd certainly bet the whole $1,000, and you might bet it on the biggest possible gamble. Why? Because if you bet it on just one hand of blackjack, well, you can get your money back. You might even get 1.5 times your money. If you put it on a 1 to 100 odds, if you win, well, then you get $100,000, right? But if you lose, you still lose zero.